What is up, everybody? Welcome to Dharma Time here on WPSN99.com. As always, I'm your host, the Dharma Guy, and of course, I am, what do I call that? I'm joined by the Dope Doctor. What's up, man?
Hello.
Yeah, I guess I'm still discombobulated at the moment from dealing with a sick dog.
You got other things on your mind, Trinity, besides
Yeah,
besides now being 1 year older.
yeah, right.
Yes.
I'm too old for this shit right now, man.
Apparently now you are.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was,
Welcome to the 40s, by the way. Not that I'm still in my 40s, but welcome to
yeah.
the 40s.
Well, you've already passed through them, so
Yep. Yep. They were great. That was a great decade.
yeah. I'm now 1 day into it, and I'm already having regrets, man. Like, wait a
Are you
minute.
really?
Yeah, the one thing, not to get too, whatever. Who knows? Who cares? People who watch us, they know that we get off topic at times.
Yeah. Whatever.
The one thing that you kind of, mentioned numerous times that never really occurred to me, at least not on the scale that it is. I've noticed over the last several, I don't know, I'd say a couple months probably, from a man's perspective. Yeah, man, the urination slows down quite a bit. So for any young men out there, or gentlemen who are watching this, or even moms who have a son or a spouse that's soon to be, an elder statesman, if you will. Yeah, I didn't realize that when I was young, I took it for granted. The powerful stream. You go in, get out, do what you got to do, man. It was like seconds, and I'd be gone. Now it's like, going to the bathroom is like a journey. It's like, all right, guys, I'll be back in a couple hours. Save my seat. Yeah, it just takes freaking forever. Now, I don't. What is that? Why? Why is that? Do we know?
I felt like it hit me right at 40.
Yeah.
A lot of things hit me right at 40.
Yeah.
That I didn't expect. Like,
Yes.
I first got my belly at 40, and I was like, all of a sudden, everything was just a little bit different right at 40. And that stream, man,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, why is it taking me so long in the bathroom? So now it's just me and the older dude.
Yeah.
It's like we can relate now,
Yeah.
which leaves way too much time for someone to start a conversation with
Yeah.
you.
So yeah, please don't talk to me when I'm in the bathroom.
So now the awkward silence just got a lot longer because I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah. I've never understood sparking up a conversation with another grown man that you don't know while you both have your hands on your member. I've never comprehended that. It's rough enough when you know the person and you're like continuing the conversation. It's already kind of rough enough. But to spark up a conversation with somebody whom you don't know, and the only thing you have in common at the moment is you're both touching yourself. That's not typically the time that I would like to have a conversation with another man that I don't know. But I don't know. They do it anyway.
Well, the other thing I never understood is how some guys lean up against the wall like they're getting arrested. They have their hands on the wall.
Yeah. So one last thing before we move on. I remember my introduction to the racetrack space for men. I walked in. I was young. I walked into the door and I'm looking around. Yes, I'm looking around for like a urinal or a toilet or something, and there's this weird like metal contraption there, and I'm like, what is that? I've never seen it before. Didn't know what it was, and then I see a dude walk up and start peeing in it, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that where I'm looking around? I'm like, oh my god, that's where I'm supposed to pee. Okay, so I did it. And so, for those of you who don't know, what we're talking about is a trough, basically, of urine. It's a river of urine where everybody's urine just comes together. We're all equal in that moment, and it just mixes together. And so, if you're at the end of it, it's just a bad place to be. But the worst part about that is they're typically this long trough, and you pick a spot, and for some reason, there's always that one asshole that comes in right next to you. It's like, bro. There's not even a divider here, man. Like, seriously, there could be splat. Like, go down, bro. Like, come on. Anyways, toilet etiquette, guys. Maybe we'll do a show on that one day. Who knows?
My first intro to that was at a race where, there's like 50 of us trying to go in at the same time. So literally, like, there's like a little spot this big, and someone will get in that little spot, and you're like, dude, I'm already with 12 other dudes here at this trough. And
yeah, you're literally elbow to elbow.
They're all drunk, so I don't trust their scream.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And then when a little kid gets next to you, you feel really awkward because they're really little, trying to reach up to this trough, and you're like, little kid, I feel so, please.
Please go away.
Yeah, can you go to a toilet?
Yes. So, anyways, I digress. That was
wow, we really digressed a lot.
Yes. Hey, you know, it's part of it. If you join the Dope and Dharma world, then you never know what you're going to hear from us. Speaking of which, let me introduce everybody. I don't know how you're consuming this at the moment. If you're watching it live, then you're on Facebook Live, which is facebook.com/WPSN99. That's where you can get all of our live shows. We try to go live every Tuesday and Friday. Tuesdays from 1 to 2 would be Dharma Time, and then right after that would be our morning after show, which is the sports, which we'll be doing today after we finish here. On Fridays from 12 to 1 is the Couch Live, where we talk about addiction-related topics. And then right after that is We the Middle, and that's when we talk about the political environment and things that are happening. And then throughout the week, obviously, you guys can catch up on all the stuff through either whatever platform you listen to podcast, or you can go to YouTube. And for this particular show, you can go to youtube.com/Dharma Time. If the couch is more your speed, then go to youtube.com/The Couch Live. Here shortly, we're trying to roll out the umbrella of Dope and Dharma, so you can just go to one location and get all the shows. But we're in the process of rolling all that out. So in the meantime, continue to get us however you have been. Anyways.
And by the way, the perfect drink by Dope and Dharma is Celsius, who did sponsor our homeathon this year. By the way, up to $66.20.
Yes, I'm a happy man.
On the NASDAQ today.
Yes, I'm a happy man. Celsius has made me a pretty significant chunk right there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
For all the consumers.
That's right. And obviously, if you're watching us, you can see on the bottom of the screen, you can reach out to us on social media. He is at the Dope Doctor, that's all spelled out, and I am at the Dharma Guy, and that's also all spelled out. Although I don't think there's an abbreviation for that. But anyways, so today, man, we had a show that we were planning on doing for a while now, and that's about pride, which I assure you we're going to still get to, maybe even next week, who knows. But we try to stay up with current things. And him and I both have various amounts of things that are happening in our daily lives, people we interact with, whatever, that we start to think, hey, maybe other people would like to hear about this as well. So that's typically how we come up with some topics. And one of the things that I've noticed in my own life, I've noticed in other people's lives, and nationwide actually at the moment, is triggers, right? And I'm not talking about triggers as in the stereotypical, what you hear in the mass media, like the snowflakes are triggered type thing. That's not what I'm referring to, although that's a very real thing, obviously.
Or addiction triggers.
Yeah, or addiction triggers. I'm referring to what would you call them, man? Let's make up a word here. Let's call them micro triggers. Right now, let's make up a word. I'm talking about the little triggers that happen that occur in our daily lives that cause us to respond or to react to things that maybe we aren't aware of why we're responding to that, right? Like, have you ever gotten, like, I'll say in my own case, right? I find myself oftentimes getting frustrated at something. And I'm asking myself, why? Like, why am I getting frustrated at that? What is it that's causing that frustration to happen? It can't just be as simple as this person's not meeting my expectations, right? Because then you'd have to ask the question, well, why did I have that expectation in the first place? So I'm talking about that, right? Because we all have them. We all go through our lives, and what we don't realize is from the day we're essentially born, we go through life, and as we're going through life, our brain is constantly analyzing everything around us and coming up with basically a roadmap, right? Like, how are we going to, all right, so this is what we're experiencing, how do we adjust? How do we cope with this? How do we deal with this? How are we going to respond? It helps us expect what's going to happen next and kind of come up with a game plan, right? Because our brain is just constantly working, whether you're aware of it or not. And so, as we go through some of these experiences, some of them are unpleasant. Or, some of them cause stress to us or trauma. And then our brain will tag that, right? They'll be, that sucked. Let me go ahead and let me mark that one. Let me keep an eye out for that particular situation again, or that feeling again. And then throughout life, whether the current situation has anything to do with the initial trauma or not, your brain's going to remember that feeling. And it's going to go, I know what to do with that. Let's go ahead and enact, DEFCON 5, we know what to do, and it's going to respond in a way that might not always be conducive to your loved ones or the people around you or what your current goals are, and you might not even be aware that you're doing it. Right? We've all seen that. We've all seen the extremes, right? Where somebody, somebody overreacts maybe to a situation, like something happens and it's a group full of people, and the reaction just feels a little overboard compared to what happened. and it's pretty obvious, and we're all like, whoa, what's wrong with that person, right? But then there's more subtle ones, right? There's little tiny ones that we don't even associate sometimes, and those are the dangerous ones, in my opinion, because those are the ones that kind of sneak up on us, and they can affect your inner peace or your spiritual journey, if you will, and how you treat people, like the unintended consequences, right? What are your thoughts on that so far? Am I just making stuff up, or does it exist?
No, it does exist. These are conditioned responses, is how I would name them. These are conditioned responses that we all have to certain stimuli. And so, we attach a lot of things to certain stimuli depending on how you're raised. Like, you have a way that you were raised in your family and in your situation. I have a way that I was raised in my family situation. And whatever responses I had to certain things that happened, and if I feel like they worked or I got the desired outcome, my brain tends to log those into let's do it again category. And if it gets logged in the let's do it again category, I'm okay with that outcome. Then over time, it becomes a conditioned response. So I just do it again and again and again and again. And what happens, the problem is, Trinity, is that later on, you accidentally may do it with the wrong person or the wrong situation, or you've outgrown the need for that conditioned response, but yet you haven't changed your response.
Yeah.
And so it takes awareness, and it takes you being able to sit back and look at it and go like, wait a minute, I've identified as that's exactly who I am or how I am, but that doesn't mean that's how I have to be. That's actually something that we learned. It's become conditional to me. It's become more like a muscle memory, for lack of a different way to say it. And so I just do it, but it doesn't mean I have to keep doing it. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is kind of like then what it feels like is someone's throwing little blow darts at me, or they're shooting me with many little arrows, like little Lilliputians, or is that what those or Lilliputians? What are those little guys called in Gulliver's Travels? Trinity.
You got me on that one. It's been so long.
The Lilliputians or something like that. Whatever those little bastards are, and they're shooting at you, and you're like, what the hell? And so you're getting frustrated because you're getting shot with all these little daggers, but the other person sometimes not even intending to dagger you. They're just like talking. But unintentionally bothering shit at you, so that then you smack them back with your own dagger, and your blow dart or your arrow might be a little bit more overt, a little bit more intentional.
Yeah. Well, I think that, and it's important too at the moment that we distinguish the fact that what we're really going to focus on today are the negative ones, right? Like, we're not focusing really as much on the positive, like reinforcement or the encouragement that we've learned over the years, because typically that doesn't cause a lot of conflict in our lives, and it doesn't really negatively impact our inner peace. So yes, those exist, but obviously this is a show trying to help people find that inner peace and happiness. So I'm not going to go over a whole bunch of things that we're doing right that's helping to it, because you already know that. So we're going to focus most of our attention on how do we kind of, acknowledge and maybe even work on some of those, unintended reactions that we might do, right? And I think it's twofold, right? And you and I talk about this ad nauseum at times, I'm sure. I know my family's probably tired of hearing about it, and that is the button, right? And so I think it's a two-pronged approach. And when I say button, what I'm referring to is, Louis and I are constantly talking about this metaphorical button that we're all born with, right? And it's, I'm going to go on a limb here and say when we're born, this button is basically tiny, right? It's probably mostly based on needs of hunger and diaper change, sleep, things of that nature. But then as we grow and as we experience things and as we start to have our brain develops more where we can kind of understand and comprehend and converse and have expectations, then suddenly that button starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Flavor.
Yeah, right? And so this button is essentially our emotional well-being, right? Like this button, our I'm offended button, things that bother us, things that hurt our feelings, things that upset us, whatever. Over time, this button starts to get kind of big if we let it. And if we're not paying attention to it, eventually this button can become like the world's biggest button we've ever seen in our lives. And consequently, what that means is every person that we interact with from going forward inadvertently can't help but to touch our button because it's so massive that everywhere they step, they're going to step all over it. And then we're going to find ourselves constantly being, annoyed, offended, upset, hurt, whatever it might be. And then the tendency at that point is to blame the other person, like, how dare you? You stepped on my button. You pushed my button. And while to an extent, that's the other half of the equation, right? To the extent it is kind of on them in a sense of trying to be aware that other people around you have buttons and doing your best to not touch them.
Right.
And when you do, acknowledge it and apologize, right? But I also think that the bigger onus here falls on us individually to learn how to make our buttons smaller, right? To understand I've got a button and it might be bigger than I hoped it would be. And I need to do some work to make that button as small as I can, because it's not fair or even realistic to expect everybody in the world to know all your little individual triggers or all your individual little button pushing behaviors, right? Because we are so unique, right? And so there's certain things that, I've seen people who have gotten really, really frustrated and hurt and angry because they dealt with somebody who like raised their voice, right? And so for them, that's a button pushing of the raising their voice. It reminds them of maybe when they were younger, getting into trouble, whatever. But then the other individual was raised in a large, boisterous family to where that's just how they interacted. So just being loud is just part of what you do. And so that person's going to always push that other person's button. Now, is it fair to expect that person to say, hey, you were raised this way and I need you to kind of lower your voice because it hurts my feelings? Or is it more reasonable to say, you know what, hey, some people raise their voice and it's not always intended to hurt me. So maybe I need to kind of adjust it. And I think they're both right. Right? I think that in order to give empathy, you got to, or in order to get empathy, you have to give it as well. And so I think that there is a balancing act there. But at the end of the day, we can't control other people's behavior, right? As much as we would all like to, we can't. We can only control our behavior. So what I try to do my best to focus on in my own life and people I interact with is learning how to make your button smaller and control your behavior. So as we go today, those are the two things that I think we're going to spend our most time on, is reducing the size of your button and try to, make an intention to not touch other people's buttons. So you got anything to add to that as we move on?
Yeah, yeah. There's another thing there. Is also the hypothesizing. I mean, if you make a hypothesis, if the reason of why this other person is communicating the way they are, the reason they raise their voice, or you put a hypothesis there that's negative to you, you're going to react to that. Your emotions are going to be based on that. So even if that proves to not be true, it doesn't matter. You've already set the emotion wheel in motion. And so it's already going, and you're already going down that road of responding and reacting, not really responding, reacting to now how you emotionally feel. So it's not just shrinking your button, but it's also this ID channel form of trying to figure out why that person looks the way they look, why are they looking at me like that, why are they sounding that way, and constantly having to know rather than just chilling, man, just relax.
Yeah, let it be.
I mean, it's just there's a lot to peace, right? But I don't think the word peace gets enough usage out there. Matter of fact, I think the only times I even hear the word peace is probably either from you, some Buddhist out there, or somebody that's teaching yoga. You don't tend to hear the word peace in everyday regular language.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's just usually in a conversation that's kind of awkward. But that's really what we want, right? We really just
and some people don't even know that's what they want. I didn't. I had no clue what I needed in my life was inner peace, man. I thought of peace as physical confrontation. And so as long as I wasn't going to jail for fighting anybody, I thought I was at peace. I didn't realize it was also a mental thing or an inner thing.
Right. Well, you just added something. See, so even when you said peace, you said inner peace.
Yeah.
You didn't say external peace, and the reason is because there is two different kinds of pieces. One is inner peace. You didn't know that you needed inner peace because you didn't know that you were inner broken. You didn't know there were cracks inside.
Yeah.
A lot of us just think all the cracks are on the outside. Like if I just have this kind of money, if I just have this kind of home situation, if I just have this kind of opportunity, then I'm fine. I don't need anything. I just need those external things to be okay because I'm good. I'm all right. Well, some of you aren't good and you're not all right. So that inner peace that you talk about, it's even less talked about, Trinity.
Yeah.
Because even when I say peace, or even when you hear peace out there, it's about external things.
Yeah.
Like we can have peace if that person stops bombing us.
Yeah.
We can have peace if those people go mind their business over there. Just don't do that over here. What Trinity's talking about is inner peace, and that's a lot more complicated because that takes you to look inside.
Yeah.
And when you look inside, you might not really like what you see completely because you might give it excuses like, well, the reason I am that way is because of this, and the reason I am, and maybe so, maybe there's some contributing factors there that you can identify, but that doesn't make it okay.
Exactly.
I think so many of us are just okay with being assholes is the problem, right? We're
that's okay just who I am.
I'm doing me. I'm just being me,
or
I'm just being real. To me, that's one of the worst sentences. I really don't like that. I'm just being real, is
Yeah.
probably one of the. If anyone says that to me, that already triggers me. Like, just if you can get out of this situation and get out of this conversation, let's get out of it, because
Yeah.
this is not a conversation I want to continue.
Well, what I liken it to, right? When I say inner peace, to help just give an analogy or a visualization, right, of what it means to me, anyways, is once again, as we're going through our lives, from childhood all the way up to adolescent to where we are now, we're going through all these experiences, and that little kid inside of us, right, that little innocent kind of thing inside of us, as it experiences these things, it starts to learn how to combat them, right? How to best navigate things to avoid as much pain as we can. And so that little kid inside of us is dictating to us, like, all right, well, if you don't want to feel this anymore, then you need to do this. And so, and that's and you know what? It's necessary, right? I needed my little kid. You needed yours. We all need it to survive as we're kids.
And that's the key word right there, Trinity. It's because at that point in your life, when you're a zygote, an embryo, and then you turn into an infant, it's all about survival.
Yes.
So all of your basic instincts.
That lizard brain.
Is lizard brain. It's all based on survival.
Yeah.
And so as you get older, you still have survival instincts, but a lot of your decisions are no longer based on survival. They're based on other factors, like what's the right thing to do, what fits into my lifestyle, what fits into my job occupation, what fits into the relationship, what do I really want to get out of the situation. Then the higher educated frontal lobe concepts start coming out. So yeah, you hit on the right word, survival.
Yeah, and so that little kid inside of us that has learned how to survive by doing or saying or feeling or responding in certain ways kind of becomes unnecessary as we get older, right? As we get older, as he pointed out, we have more tools at our exposure. Like, we have the ability to remove ourselves from situations that we might not have had when we were kids. We have the ability to pick and choose the kind of relationships we have. So we have more tools at our disposal. The problem is, though, is our grown-up self, if you will, inside of us, has a different set of rules and a different goals than the little kid, right? So the adult in us has a set of tools and an agenda, but the little kid inside of us has a different set of tools and agenda, but their agenda is based upon survival, towards the adult in us is based upon happiness and connection and things of that nature, right? And so when I say inner peace, what I'm talking about is that battle between the two of them that goes on within us day in and day out in every interaction that we have. And that's what I mean by inner peace. And for me, the way that inner peace was kind of, or the way I choose to try to achieve that inner peace is I've had to acknowledge in my life that, talking to the little kid inside of me, like, thank you, right? Like, thank you. You helped me get through some tough years of my life. You've given me a pretty good foundation. You've got me where I need to be, but I've got it from here. Thank you. Thank you for everything you did. Go play, right? Go live your life. You're free now. You don't have to fight anymore. You've done your job and you've done it well. Let me take over. I got this. And that is a daily thing, though, guys. This isn't something you're going to do one time, metaphorically speaking, of course. Well, I mean, unless you want to look in the mirror and have this conversation. But the point is, it's not something you're going to do one day and be like, all right, I'm done. No. That's daily, dude. That's every day, sometimes every minute. It depends on where you're at in your life and what you're going through. But every situation is going to come up is going to, somebody referred to it to me as the Audubon of our emotions, right? It's like this really fast-moving highway. Something happens. Our immediate thoughts, I can handle that. And that's the little kid talking. Because he's been doing it for so long. He's like, I know exactly how to do that. And so we need to kind of slow things down a little bit. Understand what's going on. Understand what's being called for here. And to me, that when I say inner peace, that's what I'm talking about. Is squelching that little battle inside of us daily that sometimes we're not even aware of, right? Like, we might be aware of major things, right? So if somebody raises their hand towards you or something like that, or somebody is cussing you out, or those things I think we all have a pretty decent handle on for the most part. What I'm talking about that I think the masses are dealing with is the little subtle things, right? Like the little tiny things of, I don't know, man, somebody ignoring your text message, or as the kids are calling it now, leaving it on red, or, little things like that in the big scheme of things really aren't that important. But for some reason, you're making it really important. For some reason, it really affected you, and you're really reacting to it to a point where it's causing friction between you and somebody else, regardless of what their intent was. Those are the situations I'm talking about. And in those situations, that's more on us individually to learn how to to navigate that and learn how to understand, okay, well, wait a minute, why did I place so much value and so much emphasis on this one thing and react to it, and look into that.
Right. So the existence of pet peeves are an issue. Right? The fact that we have pet peeves are exactly kind of what we're talking about. Like, how are they created? How do they come up? And the funny is, like, when you recognize this, like Trinity and I were having a real cool discussion about this yesterday, and we were kind of cool with some of them. So at least I was, and I'm like, I am cool with this one. So this one right here, I'm keeping. I don't care, because I only expose it to my innermost circle of friends.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, the rest of the world doesn't need to see this pet peeve because I like it. It feels good, and I want to express it. The key is to, if you have that kind of control and placement of it, that's one thing. Yeah. The other thing is having things like that actually overflow and bleed into other areas of your life where everybody sees it. Yeah. Like, some of these things, boys and girls, you don't need to show to people. You probably want to keep that one on the hush, because it causes you more explanation in your life or more trouble in certain relationships than it needs to. That wasn't the intent of you having that, right? So I think part of the stuff that we're also talking about then is asking yourself, if I'm responding emotionally to a lot of things that are happening around me, let me go back and do some work internally to kind of find out what's really triggering me and why my responses are what they are to even certain people's presence. Yeah. I'm going to give you an example, Trent. I remember when I was young, because I saw Mike Maynard come in. What's up, Mike? Mike Maynard just come on to Facebook Live again. We're on Facebook Live for those of the people that are listening to this on a podcast and want to join us, live while we're doing this. You can go to Facebook Live /WPSN99 on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, and you'll probably join us at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But I'm going to go to this because Mike Maynard is a high school friend of mine. So, like, in high school, I remember that my initial response to when my mother would come home was, I got to get the hell out of here. I mean, I really felt claustrophobic as soon as I sensed her car pulling up. Like, I knew I just had to go, because the person that I was at the time could not really exist the way I wanted to exist in her presence. Right. Because everything, the way I spoke, the way I acted, the things that I was doing would all be controversial to her. So why would I want to be around? The whole point was, I have to get out of this situation. Right. Now, if I would have took that same thing, right, into this adult life, how would I have the relationship that I have with my mom right now? I wouldn't be able to. No. But instead, it's a totally different scenario, to the point where yesterday I'm driving home from Ocala, and I was doing some work up there, and I was driving home, and I was on that long road, Trinity, and I finally got my signal back through the forest, and I just wanted to hear her voice, man. I just wanted to hear my mom's voice, so I called her. Sure. And that to me is an example of something changed along the way. I worked on some things along the way that changed the whole dynamic of that relationship. Yeah. And so now that was not a triggering offense. Her presence, her voice, her being was no longer a triggering offense, because I'm not that kid anymore. And some of us just have to grow up and let that kid, like Trinity said, let that kid be, because you're not that kid anymore. No. And then and by the way, the stuff that you're a kid at and you enjoy it and it still works for you in your life, hey, man, keep doing that, because we got the kid in us. Yeah. Like, when I play Madden, I'm still that kid. I like that kid. Well, that's the thing, right? Is learning that balance, right? We have to learn that balance of different situations call for different skill sets, right? And the other thing that you said in there that I really want to touch on, I want to make sure that we don't skip it, so I'm going to bring it up now. Okay. And anybody who watches the show, guys, we don't really have a schedule. We just kind of go with it. So, but the other thing that you brought up was the word change, right? That word change freaks out a lot of people. It makes people think, like, hey, I don't want to change, or I want to be who I am, or I've worked hard to get to where I'm at. I don't want to change anymore, or I don't want somebody else to change me. Those kinds of things. And if that word bothers you as much, first of all, I would look into that, right? Because the only thing constant in our life is change. I mean, everything's constantly changing around us. We typically only have a problem with change when it is going against what our expectations are. But regardless, think of it as this way, because I talked to my wife about this, and her and I had a pretty intellectual discussion. We've had it numerous times over the years when it comes to change or whatever. And I told her to better look at it as evolution or growth, right? Instead of change, like, I don't want to be the same person I was when I was in 7th grade. Do you? Like, I don't. No way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even want to be the same person I was last year.
Like, I would like to think that I'm continuously growing and evolving. Like, as I go through life, I have more experiences, I gain more wisdom. My hope is that I apply that wisdom that I didn't previously have, and therefore that's going to change or make me evolve and grow into something different, right? And so the other thing of that too is, for me personally, there's certain things in my life that, as he was pointing out, I was totally happy with, right? Like, I was totally happy with being for lack of a better word, the prick in the room if I needed to be, right? Like, I was okay with scaring the shit out of people. I was okay with being this boisterous, get out of my way, leave me alone kind of guy. Didn't bother me at all. However, I'm in a situation now in my life where I don't want that persona to come off on my wife or my children, right? I don't mind if the dude, in the car in front of me, or a guy at the store or whatever looks at me that way. It doesn't bother me at all. Go for it. But I don't want to come home and look at my 11-year-old daughter's face, or my 9-year-old son's face, or my wife's face, or my 16-year-old daughter's face. I don't want to look at any of their faces and see that same fear. And so for them, they're a catalyst for me to say, hey, you know what? I need to grow in this area. And that's what I encourage all of us to do, is to stop looking at just change as a negative thing. Stop looking at changing learned behavior is changing who you are in essence, right? Because who you are is not the things that you do. Like, who you are is more indicative or more associated with who you were before all these traumatic things happened, right? Before all the pain, before all the trauma, that's more indicative of who you were. And I don't know about you, but I very rarely come across like a 3-year-old who's just this raving asshole who's arguing. You just don't. They're full of love. They're full of curiosity. They're full of all the different emotions that we experience as humans, right? So that's who we are. But then you start to go through pain, and then we start to learn how to hide who we are through these coping mechanisms, these defense mechanisms. And so that's what we do. And then we fool ourselves as we're adults of, well, that's just who I am. I don't want to change. That's not who you are. That is changed from who you were, right? All you're doing is trying to go back to who you really are, through a growth, right? You're growing to overcome those barriers that have been put in place that keep you from being who you truly are, right? Because none of us truly deep down are these defense mechanisms, right? They're tools to get us what we want. We think that's who we are, but no, you learn to do that, right? And so, and that's the thing. Like, in my life, I was okay with some of those defense mechanisms because, let's be honest, they worked, right? Like, why would I not want to be that? It worked for many, many years of my life, and it got me, varying degrees of success in different areas, right? But I finally found, another area of my life that I wasn't successful in, that I'm starting to taste some success, and I'm realizing, well, wait a minute, those same behavior patterns that were successful in this area won't be successful in this area. So if I want to keep this successful, then I'm going to have to adapt and grow. Change, some might say. And it's not for a negative reason, it's for a positive reason. It's, I want this to blossom and flourish, and in order to do that, they need different things from me. My 9-year-old daughter, when she looks at me, or my 11-year-old daughter now, when she looks at me, she doesn't need the intimidating prick at the store that makes people leave them alone. That's not what she needs from me. She needs loving, kindness, tenderness. And so if I don't evolve and grow in that area and learn how to give that to her, she's going to be having a different conversation with a therapist when she's 30 years old, right? And that's not what I want. Yeah.
Yeah, you just scared me. You don't want to be the dad with daughter with daddy issues.
No. So that's my thing, right? So I want to make sure we address that, right? Because I think there's a lot of people who are listening to this who might be thinking, yeah, that sounds like good ideas, and they're probably thinking of like 6 or 7 people in their lives that should abide by that, but they're not thinking of themselves because they're like, well, I don't want to work on that, but little Joe over here really needs to work on. Well, I'm talking to you, right? Like, if you're listening to this, I don't care who you are. I've never met you, but I promise you've got things you can work on. And I guarantee you that the people in your life would appreciate that. And they wouldn't, if you start treating people with more love and kindness and generosity and respect, I don't think a single one of those people are going to be like, man, God, what happened to, since I said Joe, what happened with Joe? Like, he's changed. I don't like that. He's like so nice and compassionate and loving now. Like, ugh. Nobody's going to say that. So
yeah.
Go ahead, man.
Well, you always want to know what the reward is. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to ask yourself, if you're behaving in a way that you're not really proud of, or you're responding in a way that is causing you a lot of trouble and explanation afterwards, then you got to ask, what was the reward to that behavior? Because whatever that reward is, at one point in time, I may have been okay with that reward,
Yeah.
but I'm not okay with that reward anymore. But I still need to identify what the reward was. And so when you start identifying what the reward was, what you'll find is you might find what the insecurity was, or that it was insecurity, or that it was fear, or it was your idea that you would be this other thing that you're no longer even close to being. Like that's why when we have conversations training, I'll say things that you'll see me say things to people like, you can come out as soft as you want to be because since you're not a wimp anyways, you're not really a soft person.
Right.
You can come off as soft as you want to be, and you're still going to come off okay because you don't need to fear being too soft because you're not.
Yeah.
And so it's just like with positivity, right? Like if you're a dork, you're a dork. You got to own it, right?
Yeah.
I love when people that are geeks or dorks, you just own it, or nerds, whatever they want to be called. I
Sure.
just love when they own it because if you are, you are. Because no matter of how much you try to play different or try to play cool, brother, we still see right through it, and it just doesn't come off natural. So just don't
Right.
do it. And so, and the opposite is true too. If you're a strong, confident person, you don't need to worry about anyone seeing you as weak or that you're not strong or that you're not a confident person because you just are. So it's just going to come through, you know. And if you struggle in any of those ways, no big deal. We're not done growing. We're all, anyone that exists at this moment. I don't care if you're 99 years old. You can still be growing.
Yep.
Evolution does not cease to exist until we terminate. So allow the evolutionary process to exist, but the more, just understand this, the more you recognize, it's a constant defrag, like in a computer. Every time you recognize something, talk about something about yourself, look inside to yourself about something. It's almost like restarting your computer or defragging your computer, where everything kind of gets back into place. And the analogy to that is just look at the way you set up things at your desk or in your office or in your home. If the 6-year-old or the 12, you talked about the 7th grader, imagine your internal 7th grader setting up your home. It would look nothing like the way you have your home set up.
No.
Now, some of the things you've put in the same place since you were in 7th grade, but I would venture to say that the way you've organized your closet, the way you've organized your garage, your desk, the way you've done a lot of your stuff is so very different than the 7th grader inside you, the way they would have done it. And so that's an example of memories, and that's an example of behaviors and responses. If you take a look at them, you would automatically refile them onto a different place within your head, and you'll just start responding differently with very little effort, by the way, other than recognition.
Yeah.
Because your brain will naturally defrag that, relook at it, and when it puts it away, it might not put it away in the same place that it was before. Now, some things require a lot more effort, but a lot of things don't, actually.
Yeah, and some of the things that we are talking about, like I want to make sure I point out, like some of them are hard, right? Like some of these responses have been ingrained into us since we were children. So the idea that you're gonna like acknowledge it and then stop tomorrow, that's probably not gonna happen, right? Cut yourself a little bit of slack and go into it knowing that it's probably gonna be difficult at times and easy at other times. But at the end of the day, it's worth it, right? Like, it's worth it because, as Maynard just said, let me put up some of his comments here real quickly.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation there.
Yeah, he said, 3 years ago, I had to find myself again because my behavior was bad and nothing was going well. Now that I found myself, my life and relationship has gotten even better. And then he followed that up with, let me put it up on the screen here, my reward now is seeing my kids love me again and want to be around me. Like, and that's awesome. I mean, good for you, Maynard. You know, and it's true, right? It's... The rewards are so much better, right? Like, you're never going to experience the joys of adulthood if you're still looking at it through the eyes of that hurt little kid, right? It's just never going to happen. Right. And there are so many joys that come with it. There's so much more connection. There's so much more warmth in the world than what we see through an injured children's eyes, right?
Yeah.
And we all had it. I don't care what kind of life you had as a kid, right? I'm not talking to just the people who have like major trauma in their lives as kids. We all have it. Everything is a trauma. My kids right now have a great life, dude. Like, they all have like a PlayStation in the room. They all have their own room. They have whatever they want. But there's still trauma that they experience. There's still pain. There's still judgment that they perceive, whether it's there or not. There's still little chips, in their psyche that they've learned how to overcome, right? So I don't care who you are. Like, in other words, don't think that because you didn't like live on the streets or have horrible childhood or something like that this doesn't apply to you. or because sometimes that can go the opposite direction, right? Sometimes that can go even worse. You start to feel guilty of why am I behaving this way when I had a great life. Well, we all had whatever life we had, but it doesn't matter. Because some hurts and some pains are perceived, right? Like we can't necessarily put a value system on, like, a bee sting to me is like nothing. It's like I got a bee sting. Matter of fact, I had a bee sting one time. I was out there trying to mow the lawn. I got a wasp sting. I finished mowing the lawn. Don't get me wrong. I made those little fuckers pay, but but I finished mowing the lawn. I went to the store, got some spray, came back, killed him, moving on with my day. My son, at 9 years old now, he gets a bee sting. Oh my God, you would think this is like the end of the world. He's on the floor, like, oh my God, right? So, and I can't tell him, like, oh man, I do probably, but.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I do probably tell him. Like,
come out of my mouth.
Yeah. My point is, though, in his little world, that was a major thing at the moment. Now, granted, as he gets older and goes through more, I mean, it probably won't be that big of a deal. My point is, no matter what life you've had, I hope. My point is, no matter what life you've had, there's going to be pain and trauma. There's going to be things in there that you perceived to be life, changing events that you're going to have to figure out ways of overcoming as you become older. We all have them, varying degrees, but we all have them. And those things will sneak up on you, man. They will. Like little things, like there's a story that somebody told me that I'm going to share here. I won't say their name, so if you recognize this story, sorry. But anyways, they were telling me this is an older individual who's very well educated, very in touch with who they are and where they're going with things, right? And they're a part of this organization, and the specific organization that they're a part of had this picture taken when they were all in this like Zoom meeting, and they were talking about how they're all together and thanking everybody on the board or whatever, right? Well, everybody was in that picture except for this person. Right? This person realized, well, wait a minute, I'm not in that picture. And so they started to kind of feel a certain kind of way. Like, well, wait a minute. Like, why didn't they include me? Are they trying to send me a message here? Are they like, what's the deal here? And they started kind of feeling this narrative. And so then they reached out to one of the people who were in charge of all that. It's like, hey, kind of bothered me a little bit that I'm not in this picture. Is there a reason for that? Like, are you guys trying to tell me something here? And then the person says, well, I don't really know. I wasn't in charge of that. Let me get back to you. When they finally got back to him, they said, hey, realized what happened was it was one of their last meetings that they had, and they just, at that moment, they took a screenshot, and you just so happened to not be on that particular meeting. So it was literally just an oversight. It wasn't intended to mean anything. It just so happened to be this person missed that particular meeting when they took the screenshot, and nobody really thought about inclusion, whatever. They just took it and moved on with it. But this person then had to address within themselves, well, wait a minute, why did that trigger me so much? Like, why did I have such a problem with it? Like, I don't want to have this problem with it, but I did, and why is that? And then, long story short, it just brought back memories of when they were like a little kid, when the mom would put them into a playpen while they would clean the house or whatever to get ready for the dad coming home, and they were like, felt ignored and they felt shunned. And so it conjured up, subconsciously, it triggered those memories inside of them. That's why they decided to do that. And so does that mean now that we all have to walk around our entire lives thinking that I'm remembering? No, that's not what that means. What it means is just be aware of it. Understand that there's other powers at play here than just the initial thing. So instead of going off the handle and getting mad and throwing a fit as if the narrative that you had in your head of they're purposely, leaving me out of this picture, be aware that, you know what, sometimes I might put more value than what's necessary or even more value than I want to put on it based upon, subliminal triggers that are happening. That's it's an example of a scenario that was told to me the other day that it really kind of sunk in.
You brought up something that I think is real important to say in today's world, because we're in a time right now where we're trying to change the entire outer world to not trigger everybody. We're talking about triggers today. And so we're so protective, overly protective, I would say, of everybody's emotions and feelings based on their life experiences and what may trigger them. And let me tell you something, people, it's impossible to go about your life and not trigger somebody because there's way too much.
Yeah.
And just when you think that you're inclusive or you're caring or you're emotionally available, you see someone else who's triggered by that. So what you're not getting is that even some of your stuff like that is triggering other people because they don't like that. We've all met someone who says, I hate happy people. I hate people that are smiling all the time. Yeah. And so we can't get into this tit for tat kind of situation that says, well, mine's okay because mine is actually more friendly, and yours is bad because yours is based on some craziness. So
Yeah.
yours is not okay. No, there's everybody. But this is why, your scenario that you just drew there, Trinity, about a person being triggered from something from childhood. This is exactly why we need to keep training everyone and teaching everyone to kind of deal with your own shit and
Yes.
not expect the world to change, because it's not as simple as that small scenario and situation. We can't, as a community, go back and go just fix that one situation and think that we handled it.
Nope.
No, because that now bled into everything else this person is experiencing.
Yep.
So it's no longer that scenario. That kid is no longer in the playpen. So how do you go back as a community and do it? Do we now get rid of playpens? Are playpens bad for everybody?
Yeah.
You can't do that. But we
Yeah.
have to teach is that, no, we all have baggage. Here's the thing. We all have different starting points. And so when we start measuring up each other's starting point, we're all going to feel insecure about that. Most of us will feel, oh, wow, your starting point is better than mine. You don't know my starting point. Or your norm is better than my norm. And we all get in this measuring contest about who suffered more pain, who's had more dysfunction, who has gone through more adversity. That is not where we need to be as a society, but instead say, no matter what your starting point is, no matter what your norm is, or no matter what your perception of your reality is, because the point is that we all have a quality of problem. So instead of measuring each other's quality of problem and try to fix everybody's quality of problem, so we're going to get a different outcome in society and think that that's actually going to be the fix, that's not it.
No.
The fix is actually accepting your own deficiencies, accepting your own shortcomings, and adjusting those how you need to adjust them.
Yeah.
Fix the things you can, and those things you can't, accept them, that's just the way it is. And if you don't do that, there's nobody out there that's going to create this fix for you. You're always going to be insecure. You're always going to be fearful. You're always going to feel small and insignificant, and it's always going to affect you. The positive is you can actually heal from all of that, but it's going to take a lot of work in accepting those things you can change and understand there's things that you cannot change. Doesn't that sound like the serenity prayer? Because the serenity prayer is a real thing that everybody really should use. Because if you have a simple little prayer like the serenity prayer that exists out there, right? And you have that many dysfunctional individuals heal using that serenity prayer, there must be something to that damn thing. So you combine that with all the wisdom that somebody like you, Dharma Guy, spouts out, but through Buddhist belief systems and philosophies, and you add that with something that simple. Come on, man.
Yeah. Well, and then,
I did a Biden. Come on, man. I can't even say come on, man. Without thinking Biden.
Well, and
that's now connected.
And the solution that this person said that they used to work through that on their own, first of all, was not chastising the other people, right? Like, their solution was internal. Their solution was after the fact. They sat down and said, okay, well, why did that bother me? When they found out, the way they had that discussion within themselves was, okay, yes, those things actually did happen, but that was then. It didn't happen now, and it wasn't those people that did it to me. All right, and that's the thing is we have to have those conversations within ourselves, because some of the some of the pains or things that have happened to us are real, right? We're not going to pretend like they didn't happen, but oftentimes we'll find out that we're taking it out on the people who are in front of us right now. And the people in front of us right now are likely not the individual that initiated that pain so long ago. So we're punishing this person for something that somebody else did to us however long ago. And we've got to stop doing that. It's not their response. It's not their fault. They didn't do it to us. They just so happened to stumble across a button that they weren't even aware of, and they touched it inadvertently. And that's what we got to work on, man. And so yes, I agree. In the sense of we kind of have, the onus is on us, man. It really is. Yeah. That's one of the things that attracted me to Buddhism in the first place, was the onus was always on me. It's if I'm suffering, it's because of me. It's not because of anybody else. Other people could be doing or saying unpleasant things for sure, but whether I take that inside and allow that to make me suffer or not, that's my decision. That's not anybody else's. And some days I'm more skillful than others. Some days I'm like I'm Michael Jordan skillful, man. I'm good, dude. I see right through all the little daggers people are throwing at me, and I'm just, I'm matrixing it. I'm fine, But then other days I might not be so skillful. Other days something might slip through the defense and get me, and I'm like, and I get my feels for a minute. But even then, I got to pull myself out of it, and I need to stop and acknowledge, okay, I saw what happened there. This person touched a button on me that I didn't realize was still, exposed. I need to work on that a little bit. I don't get mad at them. Like, I look at myself and say, okay, I need to get better at that. And I think that's what we all should do a little bit more of.
So, Trinity, it's not your fault that one Christmas I didn't get what I wanted to get. So now every time I look at you, I remember Santa Claus, and therefore I'm triggered.
That actually is my fault, by the way.
I want to cry.
That is my fault. I called your parents one time when I was a little kid. I told them not to do it. So I apologize for that. That's my bad.
Dude, it was funny, man. My parents...
You're going to put your eye out, by the way.
Yeah, it was always, not this year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get you that this year, so you're just not going to... It was always like, they want to, there's so much mind play and psych play of just trying to make you feel as horrible as you can just to bring you back up again. They loved messing with my head, so it's no wonder that my brother and I have that kind of sense of humor and that kind of way of being. And so our kids, unfortunately, have had to deal with all that. But I don't say... Well, I say unfortunately, but not really, because I think it's fun. And they have it too now, and I see them have it, and I'm like, whoa, boy.
Right on.
Passed on. Anyway, we got to get going, bro. We got a meeting to go to soon. So
Yeah. I'm going to do just a couple comments. Simon said on here, he said, finding yourself or working it out is an ongoing process, ever evolving. Definite wise words. I agree. Maynard said he had to retrain his brain. I agree. Marissa said, one of my goals is to make people with disabilities not so easy to trigger. Easier to do that than it is to baby-proof the world for adults with feelings. That just increases the chances of crossing the line into chipping away at our freedoms. Absolutely agree. Yes, we have to continue on to do our next show and get off.
What about Ellie? Wait a minute. What about Ellie? Said she was still trying to find herself. And you know what, Ellie?
Yes. Ellie said, I'm still trying to find myself.
You're not lost. Ellie, part of the issue here, and I want to speak to you for a quick second, you're not really lost. So just, maybe you just need to get a piece of paper and a pen out and maybe sit with somebody that you can have this kind of open conversation with on a one-on-one basis. But you're not lost. It's just maybe you're just not right where you want to be or feeling the way you want to feel. But lost is not it.
Right on. You got any last words before we cut this and go to our sports show?
No, I'm done. I'm good. I'm ready.
All right. So once again, thank you everybody for tuning in to Dharma Time here on the Dope and Dharma Show. By all means, feel free to subscribe, like, share, all those fun things. We're on every major podcasting network. We're also, or platform, I should say. If you want to watch us live and interact and have your questions read or answered, go to facebook.com/WPSN99 and you'll always get an update when we go live, and then we can kind of chat back and forth. I'll make this short and sweet and simple. In life, we all have a button, man. And that little button is our I'm offended button, I'm hurt button, I'm traumatized button. And as we go through life, that button gets bigger. And yes, it is absolutely imperative on us to recognize our button and do the work necessary internally to make that button small so we're not as easily triggered or offended by those around us. And on the flip side of that, part of our job also is to when somebody tells us that, hey, we're doing something to offend them, when they're telling us that we are stumbling across and touching their button, it's important for us to do a little bit of work there as well and try not to offend somebody or try not to touch their button once we're made aware of it, right? I'm not talking about inadvertent. I'm talking about when they told you very clearly, hey, this offends me, and you keep doing it anyways. Now you're just being an asshole. Stop, right? So that's all I got for today. For those of you who are watching us live, by all means, we're going to end this broadcast. We're going to come right back, and we're going to do the morning after with Dope and Dharma, the sports show, where we're going to talk a little bit of probably NFL playoffs and some other sporting things. So that's all I got. So now that you know better, do better. Peace. Are you still here? What are you doing? I told you, go do better.